He was disciplined and yet flexible. He was approachable. He was very principled, and he was stubborn. Oh my, he was stubborn, but he was very warm.
Both my grandfather and father are extremely meticulous people. My mom laughs that my grandfather used to follow us around with a dustbuster, cleaning up the crumbs.
He was my best friend, he was my mentor. He exuded integrity. He earned the respect of peers that is something I envy today. In the summer of 1986, after my dad had been at Merrill Lynch for 20 years, he said to me, "Son, I'm just not having fun anymore. The business has changed a lot." And I said, "Well, why don't we go into business for ourselves? Why don't we start our own company?" I remember well when he and I were in New York on a rainy weekday evening where we had been interviewing firms to act as our custodian. And he swatted me on the backside and he said, "Son, we've got the world by the tail." February the 6th of 1987, we resigned good paying jobs with a lot of security to take the entrepreneurial plunge. A couple of months after that, my dad was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And in October of that same year, the market dropped 30% over 2 days. And my mom looked at my wife across the table at Thanksgiving and said, "My Lord, what have they done?"
I spoke to the doctor after Bob's diagnosis, and he said with that new business, he's got something to jump into and focus on, and that's the best medicine we could give him.
As I became his partner and worked with him and watched the incredible strength and dignity with which his last years progressed, he was just a remarkable man. And he was a ballast that Robert had to have.
I was 24 years old, put in my resume, and I went and interviewed, and I remember I thought it was a little bit odd that Bob and Robert wanted to go to dinner with me. And my mom to this day said she was a little suspect till she met Bob and Robert. One thing I think that we very deliberately put into place was the structure of the company. The business model of no one gets paid for business, it truly is a team effort, is rare. It brings better process and a better end product to the client.
I really believe investment management is most credible when it's delivered in an employee-owned organization where we invest 100% of our capital alongside of our client, where we work together as a team, where we are unconflicted by a broker-dealer or manufacturing investment product.
Nobody was doing that at the time, taking away the conflicts of interest that are inherent in brokerage.
On Bob's untimely death of prostate cancer, Robert and his then partner Clay Rollator came to me and said, "Jeff, why don't you join this group as the third member of our executive team?"
We got better and better as we went along. We didn't have, for example, a way to scientifically allocate assets based on valuation or any other format. And so we merged with Bob Reiser, and he brought that expertise to the table, which gave us a huge jump in ability to serve clients.
As a consultant, I had to learn early on about real estate and about international investing and about options. And so I had a much broader perspective, and we took the concept of the consultant model, but incorporated it into an investment service. In our model, we not only advise, but we actually do the execution and have the fiduciary responsibility for it. One of the things I would say we pioneered is the use of index funds for our investment programs.
That was a powerful moment when we had the right people on the bus, we had the right plan, and it was focused. That's when things took off.
My partners and I continued to grow the firm to the late 90s, where we had become the largest independently owned investment counseling firm in the South. And everyone started calling. Bessemer Trust, Northern Trust, Wilmington Trust, Goldman Sachs, Mellon, and a host of other firms had moved to Atlanta, most of whom wanted to buy a firm that had a local presence. When we decided to sell the majority of our equity to Wilmington Trust in 2002, We thought we had an opportunity to take a bright, entrepreneurially driven team and put them inside this trusted, venerable brand, because the consensus view at the time was Wall Street or people in the investment business were smart about managing money, but you couldn't trust them. Banks could be trusted, but they weren't particularly good at managing money. When the financial crisis hit, people realized that they couldn't trust Wall Street and they couldn't trust banks.
The worst of it really started to manifest itself in late August, early September of 2008. And that's when Lehman finally went belly up. And we all started realizing this situation was starting to spiral out of control. I mean, 10% a day, and try to fathom that. It really shook my confidence to the core.
We were much closer to a real major economic crisis than we've ever been since the Great Depression.
A very stressful time for clients. I remember it to be a stressful time for the team. Truth be told, nobody really anticipated how bad the great financial crisis was going to be. I'm proud of the job we did to protect capital during those times, but just as importantly, I'm proud of the job we did to ensure that clients didn't give up on the opportunity that capital markets presented. Just as equity markets recovered in 2009, unfortunately, the banking business did not. For that reason, Robert decided to resign from Wilmington Trust and start an independent firm again.
Wilmington Trust had to shut its doors less than 2 years later. I got a call from Robert. I can't really promise you what you're going to get paid. I can't tell you when we'll get our first client, but I'd like you to join this organization.
I'll tell you, it was the most terrifying thing that I've ever done. And I remember calling my husband and saying, I think I'm going to change jobs. It's something that Robert's doing. And he goes, do you believe in him? I said, of course. He said, all right, let's do it then.
I tendered my resignation at Wilmington Trust. I went home to my wife and I said, Eve, I no longer have a job. She said, you got to do what you got to do. 5 minutes thereafter, the bouquet of flowers arrived from Robert Balentine saying, I promise there will be food on the table.
I will never forget the day I got a call asking me if I would like to join Balentine 2.0. The opportunity to be a part of that group was really something professionally that was huge for me.
I was honored that he came back and said, Jeff, why don't you join me in forming this new entity? And Balentine 2 was launched.
We started Balentine December 7th, 2009. That was the day we walked into this building on the 10th floor and occupied our temporary space.
It was not a hard choice. I grew up at Balentine & Company, both professionally and personally. I never felt a ceiling. I never felt there was anything I couldn't do if I put my mind to it.
Balentine's had extraordinary luck in attracting really competent women to the firm. Robert was very open to bringing people in, making them partners, advancing them. So I think that was ahead of its time.
In a world where everything is commoditized so quickly, the only durable, sustainable competitive advantage that firms in our industry have is the culture. It starts with excellence, goes on to integrity, mutual respect, and an entrepreneurial spirit.
The service that we provide to families is a very noble one. It's a very necessary one. And there are a lot of really exciting things happening here.
If you look around Atlanta at most of the charitable organizations that have an endowment, there's a Balentine person involved.
From day one, we had a belief in giving back to the community. Balentine encourages in any way possible for the individuals here to be part of the community and to take leadership roles if they have that opportunity too.
Culture is something you live and do versus talk about clarity of purpose, goals, opportunity that I think came with building this firm.
I think every business that's successful is always iterating towards continuous improvement. The wonderful thing about our team is that sense of continuity, thinking back to 1998 when Bob Reiser and I merged our firms together. I think if my dad walked in the front door of our offices today, he'd be really proud. He'd be proud to see his name in the lobby. He'd be proud to see his portrait hanging in the boardroom. And he'd be proud walking down the hall and seeing the office where his granddaughter works, who was 10 years old at the time he died.
The honesty and integrity, that is the most important thing to him. I know his dad felt the same way, and I think that this business was built out of that.
I think he would be very proud. They worked hard to have those values and the recognition.
You can see how much he loves this company and running this company, and then I guess that kind of trickles down.
I think that speaks to the loyalty of the team of people that have brought him along this 30-year journey and is still in place today.